The Rams have an interesting wide receiver situation. The Falcons want to play like a track team. And what are the Raiders doing at quarterback? These topics and more discussed on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show. We are live on the Better Sports Network. Hello, hi, welcome everybody. I'm Eric Balkman. You know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Road of His High Stakes Lowdown, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. This is the HSFF show on the Better Sports Network. Want to welcome you in tonight for July 11th. We will be here for the next 2 hours. Coming at you strong with plenty of fantasy football talk. It's that time of year. We're all in. If you're watching this, which I know many of you are, you're already drafting, you're already having fun, and you're trying to find the best way to win $1 million grand prize this year in fantasy. Well, let me tell you about the 2024 Fantasy Pros Championship. Drafts are filling every day. Live drafts, slow drafts. Plus, you can get involved in the weekday giveaway right now. If you draft by tonight, or if your slow draft starts tonight, you'll be eligible for the drawing we're going to have tomorrow morning, Friday, for 3 free Fantasy Pros Championship teams, $350 value, and that you can use this year to try to enter for a $1 million grand prize and a $6 million prize pool. So check that out at myffpc.com. Sign up today, myffpc.com. Don't forget about the 2 best ball tournaments we got going on, the Empire Leagues and the Dynasty Leagues that we have popping off over at myffpc.com as well. More to come on that throughout the show. Very excited tonight to welcome in my co-host, the founder of the Fantasy Football Expo, the guy who puts out the best fantasy football consistency guide, the award-winning fantasy football consistency guide as part of Big Guy Fantasy Sports. You follow him on the X at Bob_Lung. Welcome in, Bob Lung. Bob, thank you so much for hopping aboard tonight.
Thank you for having me, man. I always love talking with you, chop it up with fantasy football. Lots of great stuff to talk about. Love, obviously, FFPC, definitely the best out there when it comes to all the high stakes stuff. Always have a number of leagues going on with that. So again, thanks for having me. Can't wait to get started.
Well, and speaking of one of those leagues, I saw that you're obviously in the Pros versus Joes challenge, which will get underway in about a week and a half. When are you drafting? What day? What's the date?
I want to say July. It's the Sunday, July 28th. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that would be draft number 4, the live draft number 4.
Yeah,
That's
So
are you in the Champagne division? Is that what it is? I think you're picking
that's a good
5th.
question.
I think you're picking 5th in that league, if I remember, because I
think you're right. I do think I'm picking 5th. Yeah. So always like to be in the middle in those drafts, just because that way you don't get caught in the runs, which can get out of control, especially in those leagues.
Right.
But yeah, always looking forward to it. Hopefully I do better. I always, kind of in the middle. My consistency kind of helps, but doesn't help,
Right. Yeah. Well,
sometimes being too consistent makes you too middle of the road.
Right.
So I need to take a little more chances this year in that league. So
I think, and that's what's great. And what Bob and I are talking about is the FFPC Pros versus Joes Challenge, competition that pits 42 industry pros versus 42 Joes in 7 separate 12-team leagues. The winner of each of those leagues will receive a free entry into the 2025 FFPC main event. Bob, I'm looking at the all-time leaderboard here right now on Fantasy Mojo's website. Darren Armani, our mutual friend, 614 people have participated in this. Right now, you're sitting 64th overall. That's 90th percentile. So
all right. So my consistency is keeping me up.
Right. Yes.
I don't have any. I'm not winning, but I'm not dead last. So that's
right. Exactly. I'm looking at a pair of top 20 finishes here for you in this competition as well. So yeah, I think you're doing better than you think. And we will be covering those. I believe in Matt. Our shout out to our producer Matt Deutsch. I believe, Matt, we are going to be streaming those on the Better Sports Network as well. I have to talk. We're having a production meeting on air, which I know is horrible, but I think that's the plan right now. So you'll be able to watch those drafts. You'll be able to watch Bob Lung draft live right here on the Better Sports Network for the FFPC Pros versus Joes Challenge. Bob, let's get into it here. Okay. The Los Angeles Rams, that's where I want to start. NBCSports.com had a report, OC Register, Adam Grossbard, who covers the Rams, said that he believes Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, are going to function as the 1A and 1B options in the Rams offense. He says it's going to be difficult to predict who is going to get more targets or more yards. And he didn't really say, this is on the Roto World Football Show, by the way. He didn't really say whether that was on a week-to-week basis or on an entire, if you look at it from a seasonal standpoint as well. Sarah Barshop, who covers the Rams for ESPN, said that in June, Cooper Kupp was really standing out in minicamp and OTAs. And Sean McVay said we don't really have the full scope of all the injuries that Kupp was dealing with last year. Now,
Right.
that's good. It's good and bad, right? Because it's good. It's like, oh, so he was playing hurt all last year. It's bad because this dude is 31 years old, and I don't know if the injury situation is going to get any better. Now, there was 11 games last year where both of these players were active together. Nacua 92 targets, Kupp had 89. What's interesting about this is and everything I just said is like, you don't look at ADP at all. You think these guys are fairly even. Well, if you look at the Fantasy Mojo ADP on the Fantasy Pros Championship, fantasymojo.com at Fantasy Mojo, Aaron Armani, get the subscription now if you play in the FFPC. Puka Nacua, 112 is his ADP. He is a first-round pick right now, yet you can get Cooper Kupp in the middle of the third round. Bob, I think that the consistency part of you wants to say, like, hey, Kupp is a screaming value here.
Oh, yeah.
Nacua, is that how you're handling him right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been in a few between Scott Fishbowl is a little bit different, but I've been in some other drafts recently, an FSGA draft I just did a few weeks ago, and yeah, I got Cooper Kupp as my third wide receiver, and I think it was round 4. He's obviously probably been moving up a little bit from that standpoint, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it. He's older. I mean, he's going to have probably his tweaks and that kind of stuff. But like you said, from a consistency standpoint, he's always been there the last few years. It's great that they're 1A, 1B, right? We've seen many teams historically have 2 wide receivers that are in the top 20, and that's all we really want out of Cooper. We're not expecting him to be Cooper Kupp of a couple years ago where he's running away with the scoring title in fantasy football. We want him to be top 20 because we can draft him in top 25, top 30, which is perfect. And if he does better than that, that's just a bonus. But yeah, I'm perfectly fine. I've been drafting him a lot. And as long as his value continues to stay down, which, the more this talk happens, that's going to keep driving his ADP up. I don't know if it'll change Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua's, but it definitely is moving Cooper Kupp up. We'll see if Nacua drops a little bit, but I don't think it'll be much even if he does drop.
I think the thing is you're trying to win $1 million, right? And if you're going to tell me that I can get a leg up on the competition right now by getting a player who is the 1B to the 1A, if this reporting is accurate, and let's assume it is, because this is what he does for a living. A round and a half later in ADP, yeah, I understand the age difference, and it is a young man's game. But I almost think it's weird to say that the older guy represents more upside here, but that's the way people are drafting him right now, and I think that's an interesting way to handle it because you potentially get the number 1 receiver over Nacua on the Rams by getting Cooper Kupp, getting Kupp in the middle of the third round as well. So that's something we'll be watching for going forward.
Especially if Stafford Stafford loves Kupp. He did a couple years ago before Nacua. They certainly have a chemistry. They just didn't have it last year. Like you said, the talks that was about, their timing being just a little bit off because of the injuries. They get that timing clicking again. Yeah, it's going to be a great year. And I think Kupp is going to be a great value because of that.
I think that another interesting player that we should discuss right here at the top of the show is Saquon Barkley, because he has moved from New York to Philadelphia. Jeremy Fowler, who covers the NFL for ESPN, said that he's spoken to several scouts around the league that think Barkley could have a Christian McCaffrey to San Francisco type of impact with Philadelphia this year. He talked a little bit about the difference, not only with Barkley in Philadelphia, but, that wasn't the only change they made on offense. Obviously, no Kelce there anymore at center. Brian Johnson is not the OC. Kellen Moore is the OC there. And more involvement for the tight ends is something that Fowler centered on too, which would be good for Dallas Goedert. He said that while the Eagles haven't traditionally featured a running back in the passing game with Jalen Hurts as quarterback, and obviously the tush push is something that we've seen be very effective over the course of the last couple of years. I don't know if Barkley is going to have the opportunity. I don't know if he's going to have the volume to get the touchdowns, to get the catches, to get up into that McCaffrey level of production. However, the fact that this is coming out from several scouts around the league, I think that this is interesting for Barkley, and it's something that we need to be looking at when we're drafting at the end of the first round. Basically, right after Nacua is Saquon Barkley. So to pair what we just talked about, if you want to fade Nacua, who's the next guy up? Well, by ADP, it'd be Saquon Barkley, the Philadelphia Eagle. A fascinating situation for a team that always seemed to like doing the whole running back by committee thing. It really would not be advantageous for them to do that. It'd be criminal to do RBBC with Saquon Barkley there this year. And that's why he's smack dab at that 1-2 turn. Bob, how do you feel about Barkley, the Eagle?
I think this is one of these situations where I probably am not going to invest in Barkley because I want to see it before I believe it. They had DeAndre Swift. They didn't use him as a pass catcher very much. Like you said, the tush push takes away almost all the goal line touchdowns. I don't, and let's be honest, do we really think Saquon Barkley can handle Christian McCaffrey type, volume on a game per game basis and stay healthy? He hasn't done a very good job in the past of this. So I think this is one of these, whatever you want to call it, coach speak, media speak, whatever, that's pushing this, whatever you want to call it, this
narrative.
The narrative.
Yeah.
That, and maybe this is them saying to the team, this is what you should be doing with Barkley, but you never have with any other running back, but you should because you have Barkley, because you paid him a lot of money. We all agree, but until I see it happen, I'm not going to believe it.
So does that mean, Bob, that when, given where he's going, I always bring this up too. Like, I think Matthew Berry from Fantasy Life, he always says this: I don't hate players, I hate ADPs. So Barkley could be a fine pick, right? But right. At the level he's going at right now in the Fantasy Pros Championship, that is a fade for you at this point.
That's a definite fade for me. Yeah.
Definite fade. Okay, and that makes sense, and I get that. The other thing too that I'm a little surprised because fantasy, with including myself into this statement, fantasy football players can be really stubborn and stupid sometimes. And I think Barkley has burned a lot of people in the past. And while we have to separate that to say like, oh, well, just because this guy did this to me, I'm never drafting him again. Well, you don't want to necessarily do that. But I think that there is more Barkley hate out there than maybe some other running backs. And I'm actually a little surprised that he's been pumped up this high. I don't know if it's because this is the best offensive line he's been in. I'm sure that
probably certainly there is that, right? I totally agree with that part.
And that's the thing. It's just like I'm still a little surprised he's going that high, and I don't really see him falling. So I don't think I'm gonna. I think I'm with you. I don't know if I'm gonna have a whole lot of Barkley this year. Yeah. Let's go to Atlanta now. This is an exciting offense. This is a really exciting opportunity for drafters right now. If you're looking to cash in on. I don't want to say league winners because that term gets thrown around way too much. But I think that there is some players in Atlanta that are being undervalued right now. And it's not just the players you're thinking of. Ike Hilliard, who is the wide receivers coach in Atlanta, told Taryn Wack, who covers the team for AtlantaFalcons.com, quote, "The faster we can play, the more efficient we can play. Hopefully, the more points we have." Drake London said something very similar. He said, "Slow feet don't eat, and the ball is going to be in the air." Zach Robinson, who used to be the Rams passing game coordinator, is now the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, replacing everybody's favorite OC, Arthur Smith. He guided the last year's Rams to the highest 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers out there, snap count 1,144, while having 60% passing rate in one-score games, which is 6% higher than what the Falcons had last year. Rondale Moore is now on the team. Darnell Mooney is now on the team. These guys run sub 4.4 40s. And when you throw in Kyle Pitts, who, again, ran a 4.44 at the Florida's Pro Day, which is a few years ago now, there is speed on this team. There is speed to burn. You also have a real quarterback this year. You're not faking it in Atlanta like they had been the last few years. Now, regarding Kirk Cousins' injury and his recovery for that, I guess we'll see when we get closer to training camp. But right now, I'm drafting these guys based on Cousins being healthy and based on the fact that I think that the Falcons are going to put up a lot of points, going to be in a lot of shootouts this year. I'm going to rattle off some ADPs here, Bob, and you tell me what you think about them. But Bijan Robinson, whatever, 104. Yeah. You got to pay a premium to get him. Drake London, 206. Kyle Pitts, again, tight end premium format of the Fantasy Pros Championship, 312. Darnell Mooney is a 15th round pick as well. Those are and Cousins is going in the 14th. Those are the Falcons, ingredients to their passing offense right now. Do any of those stick out to you? Like, that is a screaming value. I think a few of them stick out to me.
I mean, Drake London is a little bit of a value, not great, but I mean, it's still good because again, he's third round and you're getting a guy that could be a wide receiver one if they get the volume that they're talking about. But the one guy that you mentioned, and I have in every draft I've done because I've been picking him in round 13, 14, or 15, is Darnell Mooney. He's the number 2 guy on this team. They've been talking, he's been talking up the team. They've been talking up him. I feel like, here's a value, especially if you're in a deep league, like our Kings Classic leagues, which have 3 receivers and 3 flex. Darnell Mooney is a hell of a find in that. And everybody's going to listen, and now I'm going to lose him in the Kings Classic. But yeah. And then, like you said, I've always been like, I am not drafting Kyle Pitts. I'm not drafting, he's always too high, always too high, always too high. This year, like you said, what was it, round 5, 4?
For Pitts is going in the 3rd. I think it was the 3rd.
So
right?
Late 3rd. I think it's 312, you said. Maybe.
312, yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so late 3rd, early 4th, right. So again, maybe I load up on 3 wide receivers. I grab Pitts as my number 1 tight end and beginning around 4 at the turn. I mean, that's a great value, especially when you realize if he just kicks it, they kick it in with him like we've all expected, he's going to be a top 5, maybe top 3 tight end this year. So those two, I mean, Mooney is a huge value. Kirk Cousins is a huge value, especially if you're in anything that has to do with 2 quarterbacks. Scott Fishbowl drafted Kirk Cousins in round 12 or 13 as my second quarterback after getting Burrow in round 1. So yeah, I think there's great value there, and I'm surprised outside of London. And well, of course, Bijan we knew, but that people are kind of like, oh well, we're kind of meh about it. And I'm like, really?
Right. Yeah, I don't think you can be meh about Kyle Pitts at all because
No.
I say this every year. I don't remember a player in the FFPC ever being polarizing literally every single year he's been in the league. Kyle Pitts has always been like that. Yeah. From being a rookie and people thinking he was too high, and then other people thinking he was going to be the next best thing, at tight end. And then the next year, well, he's coming off the bed, or he's coming off a great year. He's going to be great again. No, he'll never do that again. And then the injuries and everything. And now here we're at the 3-4 turn again, where either you love him or you hate him there. I'm with you on London, and I'm with you on Mooney too. And here's what I would say to all the Kyle Pitts haters out there. It's fine if you don't like him. You can leave him, let somebody else draft him. But if you are a Kyle Pitts hater, you should be a Darnell Mooney lover, right? You should be getting him. Don't wait until the 15th round. If you don't think Pitts is going to bring home the bacon, then you need to be bumping Mooney up to like the 13th or 14th round. Don't wait until the 15th round, because that is how you see the Falcons offense. Unless you just think it's going to be London and Robinson, and with Zach Robinson running things there, I don't see that happening. I think this is going to be a total.
And Kirk Cousins is going to throw. He's going to spread the ball around. I mean, he's still a play to win the game player, which he should be. So yeah, I mean, we're not Arthur Smith, but certainly he's going to spread the ball around. And if London's double teamed or Bijan's not getting the holes, or, they're filling the box, then he's going to look elsewhere. And that could be Mooney down the field, or it could be Pitts across the middle. So there's so many options for Cousins. I feel like he should be ecstatic because really he basically had Jefferson and Addison as a rookie, and didn't have much else. His running backs weren't doing him any help. I mean, Hawkinson was great, but then he got hurt. So I feel like Cousins is in a great situation.
I think he's in a great situation to draft too. I mean, quarterback is, in my opinion, it is so deep this year. For people who love waiting on quarterback, there is just a bajillion ways that you can cobble together what 2 you want to go with. I mean, if you grab an elite guy, Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, whatever, you can grab Cousins later on as your second guy. Or Cousins could be your second guy after you take Caleb Williams or Jared Goff or something like that, and pairing those guys up. Or if you really wanted to be crazy about it, I mean, I think you could load up at running back, wide receiver, and tight end and go with a Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers, or a Kirk Cousins, Matthew Stafford pairing. There's not a lot of people that are going to wait until 17 quarterbacks are off the board to take 2 quarterbacks, but I think you could do it this year.
But you could do it. I think you could get away with it. Yeah.
Well, and even if, you think about, so first 6, I'm just looking at the FFPC Fantasy Pros ADP right now. Top 16 quarterbacks are off the board. Here are the guys that you can get at quarterback 17 or later: Herbert, Cousins, Stafford, Deshaun Watson, Rodgers, Mayfield, Geno Smith, and another guy that people are getting suddenly very excited about, Will Levis. Like, these are all players that you could get super late in this. Like, we're talking 16th, 17th, 18th round. So there's a lot to like about quarterback this year as far as the depth goes. Evan Engram is our next topic here. A guy who's been, quite frankly, getting a lot of airtime on this program. So if he does fall flat on his face, I'm not going to look great. ESPN.com's
Me neither.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Michael DeRocco was speaking with Evan Engram, and Engram was talking about last year being in Jacksonville and saying his role was being the security blanket for Trevor Lawrence. And he had a 5.0 ADOT, which is not great, Bob. It's a career low for a player who is entering his 8th year, I beg your pardon, into the league. Now, he might be more of a field stretcher this year. In 2017, when he sort of had that role, he was 11th among tight ends with a 9.0 ADOT, and that he was tied for 3rd in the league in deep targets that year as well. Last year, 140 targets, 114 catches, 963 yards. Those were all career highs for Lawrence. He only got in the end zone 4 times, but we know touchdowns, that's not a sticky stat. It could be fluky. Right. He could get in the end zone 10 times this year, and I don't think it should surprise us at all. So he is, if he is going to be a deeper threat this year, that's good for yardage. It may be good for touchdowns. It's not great for receptions and targets. The trade-off here, you would think, would be bigger plays, which is good. We like big plays in fantasy football, but I do think that we like targets and we like catches a little bit better. Your thoughts right now, Evan Engram, a player that is going in the Fantasy Pros Championship fairly high, tight end 7 at the 401. He's basically going right after Kyle Pitts at this point, Bob. I like him this year. I've been drafting him, and it sounds like you've been doing the same.
Absolutely. Now, if I'm not mistaken, FFPC is tight end premium. Correct?
You are correct.
Correct. So then, hence why he's going in the 4th round, because I've been doing drafts that were just straight tight end, and I've been getting him in around like 6, 7, 8. Which is just absurd because, like you said, last year 2nd in total points, but more importantly, 3rd in consistency. Only LaPorta and Kelce was ahead of him. So the fact that he is tight end 7, 8, whatever that is just dumbfounding to me. Yeah. And will he get more deep balls? Maybe, but let's be honest. Is that what they really want to do with him when they've got Christian Kirk on one side and they've got
Brian Thomas, obviously.
Thomas. Yeah. I mean, aren't those the guys who are supposed to stretch the field? Now, if he can catch one down the seam, okay, fine. And he runs it for 30, 50, 40, 50 yards. I'm all for it. Certainly the touchdowns could be coming, as you mentioned, because Calvin Ridley was their highest targeted player last year in the end zone. So he's gone. So you got to believe a tall, big bodied person like Engram might get more touchdowns. Yeah, I'm all over him. I mean, he's just in a great spot, a great value. And yeah, I have him pretty much every team that I've drafted so far at tight end. If I'm not getting Pitts, I'm getting him.
The other thing to keep in mind here too, and I'm always wary about what players themselves say, not like really wary of when players are talking about their injuries and how healthy they are or how hurt they are, because I think they often overestimate their health. But, this is, consider the source here. This is DeRocco speaking to Engram himself, and Engram saying, this is what I did last year. This is what I'm going to do this year. Okay, well, this is not the coach saying it. This is not the OC saying it. Maybe they want to do that. Maybe they would say that too. But it's one thing to actually to do it, to execute this. And I think you're right. I mean, I think if Kirk and Thomas are the field flippers, they're the lid lifters. What are we doing with Evan Engram? We're not sending him deep with those guys.
Right. It's not going to send 3 guys deep.
Right, exactly. We're going to keep him in the same role that he had his best season at last year.
Right.
So I think that there's something to be said for that. So you like to hear that they want to send him downfield more, but you also have that cushion and that comfort of like, they still may utilize him in the way that they did last year when he was great.
Right. Even if his depth of target is 10 yards overall better, it's still a plus. Right. It's still deeper, but it may not be the going 50, 60 yards per touchdown. I don't see that happening.
One of the we talk about Evan Engram and how you and I have been drafting him a lot. I've been drafting Chris Godwin a lot this year, and he's been turning into great minds. Hopefully, he's a guy. Well, I'll just read this. Greg Allman, who covers the NFL for Fox Sports, said that the Buccaneers plan to use Godwin more from the slot this season. Godwin's role will be, quote, the role Cooper Kupp had with the Rams when Liam Cohen was there, who's the offensive coordinator for the Bucs. Godwin was in the slot last year 37% of the time. That was his lowest total in 5 years. Now, in 2021 and 2022, 72% of his snaps were from the slot, and he caught 202 passes combined in those 2 years. Last season, he saw sporadic usage. I shouldn't say he saw no usage, but it was kind of all over the place. 42 targets in his last 5 games. So I think the thing that we see with Godwin is something I always apply to fantasy baseball. In other words, if I can find a proven player coming off a down year, chances are the fantasy community will be still down on him because we do not have elephant memories. We have very, very small, very, very short memories. And we just remember Godwin not being a world beater last year. So he's probably going to be going later, and he's going at a price where I'm comfortable with right now. Now, in the FFPC and the Fantasy Pros Championship over the last 5 days, Godwin is not even a top 30 receiver. Granted, he's close. He's wide receiver 31, but he's going in the early 6th round. Okay. Now, I'll just tell you right now, at that spot, this is like T. Higgins, Tank Dell, Terry McLaurin, Hollywood Brown territory. I could kind of tell myself a story about all those guys, but man, Godwin does stand out there as a guy that I think has the easiest path to outperforming that ADP, Bob.
Absolutely. And once again, let me highlight the consistency of this player. 2 years ago, as you mentioned, when he played mostly slot, number 2 in consistency out of all wide receivers at 93%. That means 93% of the games he is earning at least 12 plus fantasy points. He was 18th in points that year, 2 years ago, but that's because he missed 2 games. The year before that, he was 79% consistent with putting top 12. So like you said, those 2 years that you talked about, he was a top 12 in both inconsistency. And yeah, I'm drafting again, just like you. I'm drafting him a lot. And I'm getting him as my wide receiver 3, and I'm just freaking giddy about it.
He's one of those players where even if he goes up in ADP, he's so low right now that I'd still be comfortable taking him like another round higher. Now, this goes in the old adage of like, okay, well, if you've been drafting for a long time, you already have Godwin at these prices. Maybe you want to go elsewhere if he's going up another round. And I think a case can be made for that, but that's only for really, really big time volume players. I think even if Godwin goes up a little bit, you still want to be in business with him. The players that we want to be in business with in the Chargers backfield is something that has come up on this show. Basically, I don't know. I mean, probably even prior to the NFL draft, basically ever since Eckler left in free agency, Gus Edwards signs there, J.K. Dobbins signs there, and the Chargers did some housekeeping or cleaning house, I should say, with no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams this year. The Chargers of 2024 are going to be very different than 2023. They have a new head coach there. They have a new OC there, new attitude. And I think a lot of us have been drafting blind for the Chargers running back situation, looking for any kind of morsel, any kind of nugget of info to hang on to try to figure out which way we should shift our leanings in the Chargers backfield. We may have gotten one from Daniel Popper, who covers the Chargers for The Athletic. He says he sees Gus Edwards as the clear lead back for the Chargers heading into 2024 training camp. He thinks the secondary touches are what people are competing for. But he says if Dobbins is healthy, he probably wins that job. I would assume that would be the case. The question is number one, is Dobbins healthy? And number two, is he going to stay healthy? So that's another conversation. Right. But people who've been pumping up Kamani Vidal, we look at 6th-round rookie running backs and their hit rates over the last 10 years. It's like almost non-existent. I think the only one was Elijah Mitchell, if I remember correctly. And even he didn't light the world on fire. It wasn't all that great. There's a lot of Kamani Vidal love out there. Popper believes that he is number 3 on the depth chart right now. The Chargers bring in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins from Baltimore, where they played for John Harbaugh. Now they're going to play for Jim Harbaugh in Los Angeles. Now, it's not all unicorns, raindrops, or rainbows and gumdrops, whatever, for Gus Edwards. He is going to turn 29 this year. At times last year, he looked like he was showing his age a little bit. Dobbins, shifting over to him, Dude seems to have a serious knee injury at the start of every season or before the season starts, including a torn ACL, including a blown Achilles. I would imagine the Chargers want Edwards and Dobbins as their top two backs. Is that enough for us to say, okay, I'm going to sink picks into, and when I'm drafting my Chargers running backs, I'm going to sink them into Edwards. Maybe I'll sprinkle in some Dobbins, but I'm not taking Vidal. The thing is right now, Bob, when we look at the ADP, Gus Edwards has moved up a little bit. He's now a 10th round pick. He was an 11th round pick. He's in the 10th round. Dobbins and Vidal are basically going back to back in the early 12th round. This report, how much are you putting viability into it, and the fact that, okay, it seems like Edwards is going to be the guy. Should I also treat Edwards as getting a starting running back in the 10th round? Is that something I want to do for my fantasy teams this year?
I mean, it's certainly not terrible value. I mean, you're getting them as you're probably running back 3, maybe even 4, depending on, how you draft or how you do your roster construction. But like you said, there's so many strikes against him with the age. How much does let's say they're all healthy. My thought is you got Jim Harbaugh. He might just start rotating them in every series, and then we've got a real mess. My old time league I've been in now for 40 years. We started in 1985. We're still touchdown only. That's where I'm really excited about having Gus Edwards in.
Right.
Then that's it. He was, I had him, I think, picked him up in a few leagues last year, scored some touchdowns for me, did. But, at the end of the year, 26 in total points, 34th in consistency, 47%. So basically half the games. Basically, if he scores a touchdown, you're good. If he doesn't, you're not.
Right.
And I feel like it's going to be kind of the same way. And I'm just not I feel like there's got to be something else in the 10th round that'll be like, I might have to go with this because it might have more upside with this player or not.
Yeah, and it's a double-digit round, so it's obviously it's not going to sink you, but those are usually the spots where we're looking for upside, right?
Right.
There's 2 guys, I would say 3 guys that are going after him that I probably would rather have. Marshawn Lloyd from Green Bay, Kendra Miller in New Orleans, and Ty Chandler in Minnesota. I think I'd much rather have. I should say, I would much rather have those 3 over Edwards because of the explosiveness of those players. I mean, Lloyd, the Packers want to involve him right away. I think it's going to be similar to what we've seen with Jones and Dillon, where you're going to get Josh Jacobs getting 2 series, and then Marshawn Lloyd gets a series. Now, Lloyd has to pass pro. That's probably his biggest issue, and he's got to hang on to the ball. But I like him. Kendra Miller, I think, is another guy. There's a groundswell seemingly over the last couple of weeks for Alvin Kamara, but I still think Kendra Miller could be a really, really special player in fantasy this year. And this pains me as a cheesehead, but like I'm kind of down on Aaron Jones this year, not because he's in Minnesota, but because he had 3 significant injuries last year.
Yeah.
And he's not getting younger. And I do believe that people are maybe not necessarily overdrafting him, but I think they're underdrafting Ty Chandler in the 11th round. So those are 3 players I give you an example of, players I like better than Gus Edwards. Stay in the same division as the Chargers here. Let's talk Raiders. The Athletics' Tashawn Reed had a report that said Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew split snaps with the starters this offseason, and are going to continue doing that at least when training camp begins. So both of them were not all that great in OTAs, turnovers, inaccuracy, and really couldn't pump the ball down the field. O'Connell and Minshew, 17th and 20th in ADOT, respectively, last season, among 30 quarterbacks with a minimum of 300 dropbacks. Jeremy Fowler thinks that O'Connell probably has the slight edge over Minshew right now, but O'Connell was already there. Minshew came as a free agent this year.
Right.
These are just bridge quarterbacks. I don't know what the Raiders' long-term solution is here, but we have to figure out what the short-term result is going to be with these 2 quarterbacks here. Bob, does it make a difference for drafting players like Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, whether O'Connell's a quarterback or Minshew? Are you rooting for one of these guys to get the job because it might increase the fantasy viability of some of these skill position guys in Vegas?
I mean, I feel like, Minshew's definitely the veteran. Didn't do a bad job filling in last year for the Colts, but O'Connell was there. O'Connell, I think I read just recently that Devontae Adams went on record of saying, O'Connell is our guy. He was our guy last year. We've been, we played with him. We were there with him. And, Adams didn't do too badly. And I'm drafting a ton of Jacoby Myers because he was 24th in consistency and 27th in total points. And yet he's going as like wide receiver 45. So yeah, I feel like O'Connell probably just keeps the job. And then if he starts failing, I guess Minshew fills in. But I feel like they needed somebody to give him something to, kind of kick it up a notch and have a veteran there for not only for that veteran presence, but just for just in case he does fall apart. But we've also heard Devontae Adams in the last week go, well, things aren't going well. I'd love to go to the Jets and play for Aaron Rodgers. So who knows?
Yeah, that's such a slap in the face to Garrett Wilson.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, because it almost seems like Rodgers is encouraging it. And it's like, dude, you just were so effusive in your praise of Garrett Wilson last year. He's still there. Just as an aside here, Devontae Adams, I think I'm starting to slow my roll on him a little bit, given his age and his offensive situation there is kind of offensive. Are you, and I'll look up, by the way, Jacoby Myers, wide receiver 52 in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now. I love that value. Devontae Adams currently is going as wide receiver. Why can I not find him here? Wide receiver 12 at the 211. Too high, too low, just right.
Like you said, the wide receivers around him are probably people like, Cooper Kupp and, Drake London and Jalen Waddle and, those kind of players. And I'm probably going to pick one of them before I'm going to take Adams. And just because I'm uncomfortable, he pulled it off last year. I didn't draft him much last year because I was afraid that was going to be a mess. And he did okay. They really forced him the ball a lot, which obviously that's why Jacoby Myers kind of quietly scored about 12, 15 points a week and, was there for people like me who saw the consistency and had him. But I don't expect much different from that. They're going to probably still force the ball to Adams and, Myers will get his and, maybe Brock Bowers gets a little bit on the side too, but they didn't use Mayer very much last year and they drafted him. So who knows?
Yeah. Our producer, Matt Deutsch, talking about how Gardner Minshew gave Michael Pittman a lot last year. He thinks he's going to do the same for Devontae Adams this year. And that could be. And it's not like Adams is like a first-round pick. He is fallen now to almost the early third round. And that's a spot we could start looking at him there. But yeah, when he was going in the early second, mid-second, there was other players I like better. There's going to be other portions of the show that we will touch on the Raiders passing situation and other AFC West teams. We want to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to find out where Bob Lung stands on great players like Brandon Aiyuk, Lad McConkey, Jordan Addison, Jalen Polk, a lot of these polarizing players that are out there. You're watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. He's Bob Lung. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. We roll on right after this.
Is Dynasty. And the place to play is myffpc.com. Go to myffpc, use promo code Kupp. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more. Now is the time to get in there and get set up with a startup draft. Now is the time, now that the rookies and everyone are set, because you can go in and you can start the draft and, you draft your Justin Jeffersons and Jamar Chases. And now that we know where the rookies are and where they're landing, you get going on that. So you want to try and set a startup draft for this week coming up if you're not involved yet. So go get involved. Use the QR code here or use the promo code that's in the link in the description here and get yourself going on Dynasty so you can really enjoy these players and draft the players you believe in. If you like Michael Penix Jr., you got to play Dynasty because you got to wait for him, but the payoff is big. And same with like Pearsall and Jackson Smith and Jigba and all these guys. Get in and do that. And I'll tell you what, the orphan leagues over there that we've been talking about, those all got bought up. They're actually all sold. People from this show I know took over a bunch of them. So right now, startups is the way to go. That's the way to rock and roll. It is startup season. Startup season and rookie draft season. That's what's up. Get set up at myffpc.com. Use promo code Kupp. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more and give you a leg up. No dealing with chasing around your friends and making them pay dues and having your buddy be like, oh, dude, I got to quit the league because I got a dog and I can't pay attention no more and I don't want to do trades. Forget all that. You can play online, MyFFPC, high stakes, low stakes, whatever you want to do with experts. And if somebody leaves the league, it goes in that orphan pool and somebody picks it up. The league has never been disbanded on FFPC.com. That's directly from Eric Balkman over there has told me that. So that's what's up. Get set up.
20 minutes until the top of the hour. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Show rolls on here on the Better Sports Network. He's Bob Lung, the founder of the Fantasy Football Expo. Of course, also the founder of the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, which you can get on Amazon, as well as check out his website, bigguyfantasysports.com. Follow him on the X at Bob_Lung. I do want to remind everybody, too, we talked about the Fantasy Pros Championship a lot in that first segment, $1 million grand prize. Register now at myffpc.com. If you're still in best ball mode, hey, that's okay. We got 2 best ball tournaments going on right now. The regular best ball tournament, we have $125 entry fee, $300,000 grand prize. That's up $100,000 from last year. And we also have a super flex best ball tournament that you can play in as well. $35 to enter that. And the winner for the first time ever will get a 6-figure grand prize, $100,000 going to the winner there. That's up from $50 grand last year. myffpc.com is where to go to play in those FFPC best ball tournaments. More to come on all the other things that we have going on with the FFPC later on in the show. So, Bob, one of the things I always love to do here on the program is to find out where players, drafters, fantasy football players like you stand on certain players. Maybe they're a fade, maybe they're a target for you, maybe you have no feeling on it whatsoever. And that's what we're going to try to do in this segment. And we'll kick it off with a player that I have seen go as the first player overall in Fantasy Pros Championship drafts. Not a lot, but I have seen it happen this season. His ADP is the 106 over the last 5 days in the Fantasy Pros Championship. And that is one Breece Hall, a player that was coming off the torn ACL coming into last year, had a really good season, and now he gets a pretty talented quarterback back there instead of Zach Wilson and all the other dreck the Jets were throwing out there. Where do you stand on Breece Hall at the 106 this year, my friend?
I mean, I certainly think it's a fair value. I mean, last year with a bad team, bad quarterback, bad offensive line, he was second in total points. He was 11th in consistency. So that's where, but like you said, so much improvement from last year to this year certainly gives it a fair value that you can pick him. My problem is always I'm staring at him or I'm staring at Jamar Chase or and I'm like, so tough. But I there's no question it's a fair value. I have no problem if somebody drafts him in that spot. I just have to talk myself into doing it at least once.
A lot of times with those first round picks, when I'm deciding between running back and receiver, I'll take a peek at ADP to find out who would be there from my next pick to find out, is there a running back that I love there? Is there wide receiver or tight end that I'll love there or whatever? But with FFPC, I think, then obviously as an FFPC employee, I don't play in it, but I think one of the difficult things that's really difficult to do in the FFPC because of all the different ways you can build your team. And you get also these crazy people who are drafting the FFPC that start with 4 wide receivers or 4 running backs or 3 tight ends, in some cases too. So it's difficult to do that. But Breece Hall at the 106, I think I'm with you, makes sense with me as well. A player in the in the NFC West that has come up literally on every show, and he will continue to come up on every show until we have some sort of resolution in Aiyuk Gate at the Golden Gate, as it were, in San Francisco. Mike Garofalo says that Aiyuk and the Niners are no closer to a deal than they were a while back. There just hasn't been no headway. Garofalo, who said this on the NBC Sports Bay Area webpage, said that a trade is not something that Aiyuk and his team are exploring or have ever explored. Aiyuk said if he had to make a guess, he thinks he'll be in a Niners jersey this year. I think that he will be in a Niners jersey this year. It's a really difficult situation because Aiyuk doesn't have any leverage. Aiyuk is good enough to get a lot of crazy money on a different team, but I don't think the Niners view him as a market resetter. And I don't think he is a market resetter. He's a great player, but he's not an elite player. And I think that's the thing that's the stalemate that we're running into with the Niners and Aiyuk right now. Now, if we look at how FFPC players are drafting him over the last 5 days, Aiyuk is wide receiver 17 at the 309. That's Waddle, Evans, Neighbors, Pittman neighborhood. Where do you stand on Brandon Aiyuk currently?
Right now, I'm not. I'm just first off, last year was his best year, his best consistency year. He was 5th overall, 81%. So he was actually even ahead of Deebo Samuel, but he's still 13th in total points. I'm with you. I think he's a very good player, but I don't think he deserves to get the elite money, and that's what he's looking for. Now, if he kicks his ego down a couple notches and says, okay, I'm worth 35 million instead of 50 or 60 million or whatever he wants, I think that the 49ers will sign him. But if he thinks he's going to get 50, 60 million and be right there with Justin Jefferson and Chase, it's not going to happen because Johnson isn't going to allow it to happen. So I pretty much have not drafted him at all. I've drafted a Pittman or one of those other guys that you mentioned, Mike Evans, those kind of people, because I know what I'm getting there. I know that, I know the certainty they're going to play, and Aiyuk probably will play, but you start stretching it out, you miss camp, and then you have a pulled muscle. It never seems to work out well for the guys that hold out a little too long, even if they still sign. So I'm out on Aiyuk. In fact, my rankings, I have him ranked like 22nd or something.
Yeah.
Just because I'm just not going to put him up there with those folks in that 15 to 20 range.
So a few things to unpack here, and plenty of reaction in the YouTube chat right now. Sean Green, who's also going to be competing in the FFPC Pros versus Joes this year, he said there's no way that Aiyuk is not a Niner. Dominic Gazzetti said that Rich Eisen had George Kittle on recently, and he said that he expects Brandon Aiyuk to be a San Francisco 49er as well. Dom also saying that the Niners do business this way, and actually the Packers do business very close to this, where they get these deals done like right before training camp. It happened with George Kittle. It happened with Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa, right? The Niner. Joey Bosa's in.
Joey Bosa's the Chargers. Yeah,
I always get those Bosa guys mixed up. Yeah. All white defensive ends who are brothers from Ohio State look alike to me. Deebo Samuel all got their deals late. Fred Warner, he mentions too, or Sean Green mentions as well. So this, and the thing is, Aiyuk does not have a lot of leverage here, based on the latest CBA. To your point, while I understand he probably has to report, the longer this stuff goes, like we don't know what Aiyuk was doing instead of OTAs and mini camps, right. And I do think there is something to be said for being there. I know there's a lot of people that say, they're in shorts and they're just running around, they're not doing anything. I think it's important, and I think the more training camp you miss, the more we've seen it happen before, where these guys either aren't in shape, or because they're not in shape, they pull a muscle, and then that sets them back, and then they just never really get into the flow of the season.
It's just an ongoing snowball. Right.
And something else you brought up, last year was his best year. And are we talking about getting a fantastic value with Brandon Aiyuk at the 309 right now because he had such a great year last year and everybody hates him because of his contract right now? If he signs tomorrow, how high does he go? I don't think he goes up that much higher. No, so what's the sense of drafting him at this spot right now when you could get that comfortability, which is not a word, but I hear people use it all the time. You can get that comfortability of him being on the team and practicing in training camp, and I'm only paying a little bit more. That's when I will think about drafting Aiyuk, but not right now.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Lad McConkey, rookie wide receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers this year. ESPN.com had a report on the Chargers offense, and in it, Justin Herbert was effusively praising Lad McConkey, saying that he's picked up the offense so easily. Chris Ream, who covers the team for ESPN, said that McConkey's perhaps been the team's best route runner this offseason. Again, no Keenan Allen, no Mike Williams, just Joshua Palmer and Quentin Johnston. I don't know how big of a bar that is to jump over. But
I probably run better routes. But.
Yeah, the Chargers did trade up to get him. And this is a situation where he is a rookie receiver that has the opportunity to be the number one wide receiver on this team. This team, however, features Jim Harbaugh as a head coach who loves running the ball. It features offensive coordinator Greg Roman, who loves to run the ball. In fact, they went out and got two running backs that we talked about in the first segment in Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins that came from a run-heavy team to come in and probably help run the ball there. So where do you stand on Lad McConkey, Bob Long, knowing that he could be the number one receiver, but maybe not number one receiver in capital letters?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly one of those guys. I mean, usually when I do my drafts, I usually try to build my core team, my starting team, focus around that consistency model that I have. And then once I get outside of that, that's when I start looking at those opportunities, a Darnell Mooney, those kind of folks. Lad McConkey is certainly somebody that, if I'm sitting in round 14, 15, and I'm like, oh, he's still there. I don't know what he's going in FFPC.
He's
maybe
in
a little bit higher.
He's in the 7th now. So you're,
7th round.
You're definitely off Lad McConkey.
Okay,
right?
Yeah, then I'm out.
Yeah.
Let me quote from what's it called, Shark Tank? Because of that, I'm out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wide receiver
7th round for Lad McConkey.
Yeah, it is a little nuts because this is what people are doing at this point. They're standing on their laurels of trying to get a number 1 wide receiver who is in that. Because he's a rookie, he's in that mystery box. We just don't know what he's going to do. Could he have a 1,200-yard season? Probably not. But there remains the possibility because we could come in and have an Odell Beckham year. And I'm not saying he's going to, but I'm saying this is the mentality of drafting right now to try. Now, this is the same area that Deontay Johnson, Rashee Rice, Christian Watson, and DeAndre Hopkins are going. Right. So McConkey is in the 7th round right now. You are out on him. I think it's a little high for my taste as well because I love Deontay Johnson this year. I'm not saying that.
I have him. A lot of league. Yeah.
I mean, Deontay Johnson, I'm definitely on. DeAndre Hopkins, I know is no longer a young man as far as receivers go. But if Tennessee opens up the offense this year, which it sounds like they're going to do, I love Hopkins in the 7th round. So there's other players there. That I like over McConkey. From a dynasty standpoint, it's totally different. But redraft, that's where I'm at. Okay. A fellow rookie receiver in Rome Odunze. Again, another player that has been picking up steam over the course of the last 3 weeks, I would say. A player that some people believe, some pundits out there believe, he's already the number 1 receiver in Chicago and will show everybody that he will be the number 1 receiver there as soon as the season starts. This is a team that already has Keenan Allen. It already has DJ Moore. Rome Odunze, not going as high as McConkey, but he still is in the single-digit rounds here, Bob. Wide receiver 48, 909 behind Jameson Williams and Brian Thomas. Where do you stand on Rome Odunze?
Where I stand is I want to know what drugs these people are taking and can they send me some. Holy cow. So there's people that are like, hey, I'm going to take McConkey in round 7 and Odunze in round 9 and screw that DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. Those guys they're has-beens. I'm like, with a rookie quarterback on top of it. Do you feel like Bob that your consistency guide, your consistency model penalizes rookies because A, they don't have the consistency, and B, the other guys that they have on their team, their teammates, like in this case Allen and Moore, do have the consistency that the rookies don't. Yeah, I mean, so in my guide, I actually do an article every year where I've been tracking since 2010. And any rookie who has over 60% consistency in their rookie season, that to me is a very good season for a rookie. Mm-hmm. Now, of course, wide receivers are far and above have the highest number of people that have done that. But when you look at the players and where they were at, who they were playing with, they usually didn't have 2 future, maybe not Hall of Famers, but 2 future very good veterans in front of them. So you've got Odell Beckham, Jamar Chase, Julio Jones, Keenan Allen, DK Metcalf, Aiyuk, Jalen Waddle, Jarvis Landry, Justin Jefferson, Kupp, Evans, etc. I mean, those guys were all, coming on a team that maybe had one other good receiver. I don't even know if they even had a true number 1 ahead of them. Maybe they did. But, a lot of times if you have a true number 1 and then you're a good rookie, you can get something out of that, because they might double team they could probably double team the top veteran and give you some space. In this case, I could see him having, I think he would be great for best ball because he might have some games where he catches 3 passes. He'll be like a Gabe Davis, right? 3 catches, 100 yards, 3 touchdowns. And you're like, oh, this is it. And then you won't do anything for 3 weeks. Right. That's what I see out of Rome Odunze. Great best ball, but, in a redraft where you have to start him and make that decision of benching, I can't do it.
It's really tough to do, really, and especially when you're talking about investing a 9th round pick into that, it makes it even more challenging to build your roster that way. Chris Lude on the YouTube chat says, "Oh, it's rookie fever," and while I kind of agree with that, at the same time, historically, rookie fever, all these guys that are drafting their dynasty rookie drafts, that usually wears off by the end of May or early June. We're in mid-July here. That's rookie fever. If you got rookie fever now, you need to get a vaccination or something, because
Yeah.
this is a massive problem for you if you're doing that.
Or cut down on the drugs.
Or cut down on the drugs. That'd be another, don't do drugs. Sean Green, I don't know if Caleb Williams can carry 3 wide receivers and a tight end this year. I think we'll get into Cole Kmet later on, but that's another good point. Rookie quarterback, which you alluded to earlier. Okay, we've been talking about rookies here with these last couple of players. Let's go with a grizzled veteran in James Conner. Now, according to Phoenix Cardinals' Johnny Venerable, he is seeing the bulk share of the team's backfield workload in 2024. According to Venerable, the coaching staff loves James Conner. They love his leadership. They love his tough running style. Quote, the best version of this offense last year ran through Conner. This is what he said in an interview with Patrick Doherty from Roto World and Denny Carter. Conner is one of their best players. Now, Michael Carter could mix in behind him over Trey Benson. This is according to Venerable, which would be really weird because of the draft capital the Cardinals invested into Benson, who was the 66th pick of the draft. Although he never had more than 20 rushing attempts in any game of his college career, both at Oregon and Florida State. But Conner is the guy I want to talk about here, the guy I want to focus on, because this is a classic example of people just disregarding a starting running back on a team, and they're letting him fall to running back 21 at the 609 right now, which is still – I can do that. It's not my favorite pick, but I can do it. Aaron Jones and Zamir White are going above him. I'd rather have Conner than both those players. I can tell you that right now. So Conner at the 609, where do you stand on him, Bob?
I like James Conner. He's definitely been a very solid, consistent back. He's usually a good, solid, consistent RB2 for you most of the time. Obviously, his biggest problem is the last 3 years. He's played 13, and 15 games in a season. So, he's not going to make it through. The question is Arizona going to be smart enough to mix in either Carter or Benson to give him a little more rest and use him maybe later in the game if they've got a lead? He's a very good back. And if he can stay healthy when he's on the field, he's very good and very consistent. That's the big if. And, he's not getting any younger. Yeah, I'm sure he looks great. He always looks great in preseason, but then he has to play games every week for 18 weeks. So that's kind of the problem. Again, I love drafting Conner if I can get him as my RB3 and I don't have to rely on him, but maybe I use him early and after week 5, I try to trade his butt before he gets hurt. But, he's a solid player. He's definitely a gritty veteran, but it's just a question of how long can you take that risk before he goes down.
And I think that's the thing that we do. If we draft James Conner, you're not expecting him to play all season. Like, he's going to get hurt. He's going to get dinged up. And that's why you build the depth there. So maybe the 609, Permar 99 hates him. Absolutely. It does not want to have anything to do with them. And I think that you can make the case for looking elsewhere, maybe at a different position in the 6th round. I'd like to see Conner fall a little bit before I start investing in him a lot, but 609 I could do. Okay. From the grizzled veteran back to a young player that had a really, really good rookie season in Jordan Addison last year. Kevin O'Connell was praising how much stronger he got, how much more physical he's been this year. He hasn't lost his burst. He hasn't lost his speed with this added strength. And this is after a year where he had 70 catches for over 900 yards and he got in the end zone 10 times. 20% of his targets are more than 20 yards downfield, 6 catches on 20 targets of deep shots, 250 yards and 4 touchdowns. Where do you stand? Again, not catching passes from Kirk Cousins this year. It's going to be Sam Darnold, J.J. McCarthy. Where do you stand on Jordan Addison as the wide receiver 42 in the 8th round right now, Bob?
I think, wide receiver 42 is fine. I have him ranked like 36, 37. So I have him as a late 3, early 4. I'd rather have him as my wide receiver 4, but he usually gets to that point, and I'm usually staring at him and Jacoby Meyer. And I'm like, so I usually go Meyer. This kid is talented, and he obviously showed that last year. But, J.J. McCarthy, does he have the arm strength? Does he, can he play in a more higher passing, outside of Michigan? Don't know. Sam Darnold can be good at times, but then he starts seeing ghosts, and we don't know what happens. So, I'm just kind of staying away from the Vikings offense this year because there's just too many question marks, and it's right there at that quarterback position. And if it proves wrong, but I would rather take my chances somewhere else.
Chase Brown is a player that I think is interesting, given the fact the report I think we got last week is that the Bengals are going to be more active throwing to the running backs this year. And the starter there right now is the guy from Indianapolis, Zach Moss. Thank you. Yeah. But Chase Brown could be we're talking about Nacua and Kupp as 1A and 1B. Maybe it's a 1A and 1B in the Bengals backfield as well. Chase Brown, running back 37 at the 10:02, knowing what we know about him right now and knowing what we know about that offense right now. Bob, where do you stand on Chase Brown?
I do like Chase Brown. Again, at that spot, it's a good value for sure. I think Moss to me is like a poor man's James Conner. I mean, he can run hard. He can get in the end zone. He can run people over, and that's great. But he never seems to finish a year. Last year he filled in great when Jonathan Taylor went down, but then he got hurt, and then luckily Taylor came back. I feel like Chase Brown needs to be used more. I still don't believe we're going to throw more in the passing game. You've got – listen, T. Higgins, you've got Justin Chase Jamar Chase, and then you got Gesicki at tight end. So you've got a really good tight end too. Now you can use and
Jermaine Burton too.
Jermaine Burton, right? So it's like you're going to throw the ball out of the backfield. Why do that? Run Zach Moss. I mean, again, if you want to mix it up every once in a while on a couple series, I get that. But that's one of those backfields that I'm not going to probably invest in, Moss or Brown, because I just don't know what's going to happen. And I'd rather take my chances on a more, solidified backfield than that one. And, because if you take one, you almost have to take the other because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it might be a best ball situation, right?
Yeah, right. It's a great best ball situation for both of them. Yeah.
Permar 99, he loves Zach Moss right now. He thinks he's a perfect fit for the system. He's a steal right now. That may be too. I mean, that's
right now it is. Yeah. Talk to me in week 10 when he's down and out for 4 weeks.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing we need to keep in mind. Yeah. We'll stick in your state of Ohio here and talk Cleveland Browns here, Bob. Chad O'Shea, who's the Browns wide receiver coach, said that Jerry Jeudy has made so much progress learning the offense this season. The Browns not only gave up draft capital to acquire him from Denver, but a 3-year, $58 million contract extension is what they handed Jeudy as well. And he could be the primary slot receiver. Zach Jackson, who covers the NFL for The Athletic, said that Jeudy has never had more than 972 receiving yards in a season, but 14.3 yards per reception over the last couple of years. He is going late. This is Ken Dorsey's offense. He's going late in drafts. Wide receiver 58 at the 12:05. He's always left a bad taste in my mouth, but I think that if I'm into the 12th round, I don't necessarily care about taste, Bob. I just want to get full. Where do you stand on Jerry Jeudy?
Well, so as a Cleveland Brown fan, since I live local, it all comes down to that one man who's getting paid $240 million guaranteed dollars. If he can stay healthy, if he can be, I don't care, 70% of what he was 3 years ago in Houston, then Jerry Jeudy certainly has value because your other wide receiver is Amari Cooper, who's not getting any younger. So I think there's value. And I think that's why they signed Jeudy, because he will be the future, because I think this will be probably Kupp's last year. I think he's 30, maybe going on 31. So I think that's why they did it. I mean, he certainly had the talent. Just 2 years ago, he was 22nd in both total points and consistency. So I think there's value. And again, like you said, 12th round, I'd take a shot, and hope something happens. Hope Joe Flacco comes back. It's all we can hope for, right? That's the only time their pass offense looked any good. But it all comes down to Deshaun Watson, and that's what scares me about that pass offense at this point.
Dom Gazzetti said the first Cleveland Browns player he's taking this year in drafts is the Cleveland Browns defense, which is sort of a terrible
idea.
It's a backhanded insult to Deshaun Watson and that offense.
Yes,
a lot of other people. And I'm a big fan of Amari Cooper this year too. I think he's going to have a great year. Moving on to Jalen Polk, Mike Reese, who covers the Patriots for ESPN.com, believes that Jalen Polk could make an immediate impact for the Patriots this season. He's 6'1", he's 203 pounds. Jared Mayo, I should say, the head coach of the New England Patriots, says Jalen Polk is a self-starter. 69 catches, 1,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns in his last season in Washington. He played outside. He played in the slot as well. It's expected to be for the Patriots this year that they're going to have Demario Douglas playing in the slot, and Polk could be on the outside a lot for a team that, quite frankly, doesn't have a very challenging wide receiver room. Right. They got Javon Baker there, and I mentioned Douglas. Polk is going fairly late right now, wide receiver 71 in the Fantasy Pros Championship, 16th round pick. Where do you stand on him, Bob? I've gone back and forth on this one.
Yeah, I mean, certainly nobody is a fan of any part of that New England offense, maybe Ramondre Stevenson, but then again, that's the only thing they have. So teams stop him, and now you've got Drake May and 43 different wide receivers to figure out who's going to be valuable. So, yeah, again, I'm probably staying away from that team as a whole. It's not a terrible, shot at round 16. Put him on there. Maybe he does become something. If he can get 6 catches for 60 yards every game, that's not terrible from that spot. So that could happen because, let's be honest, New England's not going to be very good.
I think that one of the players in the NFL that is hoping New England will not be very good is a guy that is going to be playing against them, God willing, twice this year, and that's Aaron Rodgers. He missed his mandatory minicamp due to a pre-planned trip to Egypt. We don't need to get into the off-field stuff. Here's what it comes down to me with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
he's an incredible competitor. He loves it when people doubt him, and he usually has his best football, or he plays his best football when everybody is expecting him to flop or expecting him to underwhelm. Well, FFPC drafters are definitely expecting him to underwhelm. The 4-time MVP is currently going as quarterback 21 at the 17-18 turn. Again, single quarterback league here. Right. I really, it's not like I want to go crazy with Aaron Rodgers. I definitely wouldn't draft him to be my starter. Right. But man, Bob, I think I'm going to have him on a lot of teams as my backup. Where do you stand on Aaron Rodgers this year?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if it's a 2-quarterback league, I'm perfectly fine with him as my number 2. And like you said, even in a 2-quarterback league, I've seen him go, later rounds, or not later rounds, mid rounds, 7, 8, which is late for a 2-quarterback. Like, he's in there, like you mentioned, with the Kirk Cousins and the, Rodgers and Derek Carrs and those kind of folks. And it's like, yeah, I mean, if I'm going to take a chance, heck yeah, I'm going to take a chance on Rodgers. Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's definitely got a chip on his shoulder. He wants to prove that there's a reason why he wanted to go to the Jets. He's got the team around him, got the offensive lines improved greatly since last year. Yeah, I have no problem getting him as my QB2, especially, either as my backup if I need him, or as a QB2 in a 2-quarterback league. Yeah, I'd love Rodgers for sure.
Bill Hollywood is out on Rodgers, and that's fine. I get it. But to me, he's part of that great quarterback depth, which is why you don't need to be drafting quarterbacks early this year. Of course, I say that, and I started my Scott Fishbowl team with 3 straight quarterbacks. So what the hell do I know? Do as I say. Don't do as I do. I think that's the biggest thing.
If it wins, it's not stupid, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Then we'll trust the result, not the process at that point. Yeah. He's Bob Lung, the fantasy football consistency guide maker, the founder of the Fantasy Football Expo from Big Guy Fantasy Sports. He is joining me tonight as we roll along into hour 2 of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show here in the Better Sports Network. We're going to put Bob on the clock. Would he rather draft certain players this year? Collins or Waddle, Burrow or Prescott? That and much more. We roll on right after this.
The Bears have to be one of the most inept franchises of any sport I've ever seen in my entire life. And they share the city with the White Sox, who are also inept. Like, that is how bad the Bears are. I just don't understand how you can go your entire existence and the quarterback that wins you a Super Bowl is Jim McMahon. You couldn't find anybody else.
They don't have a good history with quarterbacks, and they let him be the quarterback for a long time, too.
Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes right there. And you drafted Mitch Trubisky. They were right there. I there's a lot of pain in being a Falcons fan. The Bears are one of the teams I could argue they might have it worse, and they have a Super Bowl.
And
when the best quarterback in the past 50 years is Jay Cutler, you have a problem.
That's so funny that you just said that. We were talking about Jay Cutler the other day, me and my friend, and I was like, yeah, he was on, because we were watching the Colorado Rockies game against the Giants, and it looked like he was behind the thing. I was, yeah, well, he played for Denver most of his career. We looked it up. Chicago let him be their starting quarterback way too long.
Here's the thing, too, is that Jay Cutler wasn't bad. Like, he was erratic. He wasn't terrible, though.
The poor man's Brett Favre.
I'm taking him over Justin Fields. I'm sorry.
I would.
But Jay Cutler led that team to an NFC title game that they lost to Green Bay. But he's gotten farther than anybody else. You want to know who the other starting quarterback was for the Bears in the other Super Bowl appearance they made? It was Rex Grossman. What are we doing out here? It was Rex Grossman, and Kyle Orton was the backup. How are you that bad? Bro, like, oh my God. Listen to the top 5. According to Football Reference, the top 5 greatest Bears quarterbacks of all time. Jay Cutler, number 1.
I can't believe it.
Sid Luckman, who last played in 1950, is number 2. Jim Harbaugh is number 3. Jim McMahon, the Super Bowl winner, is number 4, and he played there for 6 years. And Mitch Trubisky, is number 5 on the list as terms of passing yards go.
That is right. The FFPC main event live drafts have begun, and you can register for them now at myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. A $1 million grand prize at stake in a $6 million prize pool. Become part of the legends that have won this illustrious grand prize right now. myffpc.com. Matt Deutsch has the QR code right on the screen, so you can just scan that. It'll take you right there. You can register for a low or a slow draft or a live. No low drafts. They're all high drafts over at myffpc.com and join the main event today. We're talking with Bob Long, the founder of the Fantasy Football Expo, and of course the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, BigGuyFantasySports.com at Bob_Long on the X. Let's put you on the clock for some of these here. Would you rather draft? And these are all players that are going, I wouldn't say necessarily right next to each other in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now, Bob, but really, really close to each other. We'll kick things off in the first round. You're going to take a receiver. Are you taking Tyreek Hill or are you taking CeeDee Lamb?
I'm going to take Tyreek Hill, 100% consistent last year. CeeDee Lamb, a little disgruntled. So right now I'm going to take Hill.
Hill would make sense too. I think the biggest thing okay, so the two things that stand out to me, Hill and Lamb. Hill is the age and the injury factor, and Lamb is how much he was used last year. But I mean, even like to your point, I guess the thing with Lamb is even when he wasn't used to the level he was in 2023, he still was crushing it. I mean, he's still worth a first round pick. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, you're splitting hairs between those two, but
between those two, right.
But if I have to pick, I'm taking Hill, but it wouldn't bother me if I got Lamb instead.
What about the old guard versus the young guard at tight end? These guys are going back to back at the 1-2 turn in FFPC Fantasy Pros Championship drafts right now. Are you still aboard Team Kelce, or is it time to give Sam LaPorta your vote at that 1-2 turn?
I'm going to stay with LaPorta just because one, he did it last year. Not much has changed on that team, where on Kelce's side, you've added now a Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice. Probably, Kelce may be used early a lot more because Rice won't be there. But when you have Rice and Hollywood Brown there, I feel like they won't be using Kelce as much. So I'm gonna go with LaPorta. They'll both be very good again.
Yeah. You bring up the Hollywood Brown aspect of that, and I guess let's just deviate just real quick off this. Hollywood Brown over Rashee Rice, given that I guess I have to bring up the ADPs with this because otherwise it's just in a vacuum. It doesn't work with these.
From what I've seen, they're not. Well, I can't remember.
Hollywood Brown 603, Rashee Rice 707.
Okay, so there's a round difference, and it's
Do you have a
because Rice
preference
is,
there?
Yeah, I think I would take Hollywood just because one, he's been clicking well with Mahomes from what we hear, and he's not going to miss, maybe 4 games, maybe 6 games like Rice will.
Right.
But who knows? Rice may not miss any, right? We've seen this before where you're going to miss like Kamara a couple years ago, and then, oh, it's too late. Season started. We're not going to do it until next year.
Right.
So
Yeah. And I think that's most likely to happen still, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I think
right.
that's the most likely outcome.
Right.
Shifting to running back here. This is a fun one because you have Derrick Henry, who is not exactly a spring chicken anymore, but he's also a freak. So I don't know if it matters. And he's on a new team with a better offensive line. Derrick Henry or Kyron Williams, a guy who's already dealing with a foot injury, but was unbelievably awesome, saw a ton of volume last year. These guys are both going basically in the late second round right now, Bob.
Yeah, I'm Derrick Henry all day. I think he's going to have a monster year. He's got a chip on his shoulder again. I think he got hurt, which happens, and he's a little bit older. But he, like you said, he's a freak. He's just not a normal person, and I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's got a good team, better offensive line, and I feel like Kyron Williams just peaked and just caught lightning in a bottle, and then they went out and got Blake Corum, and it's like. Yeah. Let's remember just a couple years ago, remember Cam Akers? This guy's the future. He's it. He's our star. He's boom, gone. Just gone. It's like, so if they could do that to Cam Akers, they could do that to Kyron Williams. Not saying he'll be gone this year, but I'm just saying if he doesn't stay healthy, if he doesn't perform, and Corum can show that he can do a pretty good job, I'm a little worried. So I'm definitely in on Henry.
I think, and Permar brings it up tonight, Joe Mixon or Derrick Henry. You can actually get both of them pretty easily in the Fantasy Pros Championship because Henry's at the 209, Joe Mixon not going until the 410. So you could easily get both of them there. Shifting to wide receiver here. Nico Collins, which I'm not going to say he's been polarizing this offseason, but he definitely has his fans and he definitely has his haters, not necessarily of the player, but how high he's going in drafts. He's going right next to Jalen Waddle right now, a guy who was Tyreek Hill's real-life teammate in Miami. You can only pick one of these guys, Bob. Who's it going to be, Collins or Waddle?
I'm going to go with Waddle just because I feel like the Dolphins, I'm pretty sure they're pulling people out of the stands to play defense for them this year because they lost like their entire defense in the offseason. So I think we're going to have those 70 to 55 game shootouts again. And I feel like Hill and Waddle talk about a team that is going to put up probably 2 top 20 wide receivers. I feel like the Dolphins definitely going to have that. And Collins, now he's got Stephon Diggs. Maybe again, they could be a 1-2 punch and be very productive. But, is CJ Stroud, is this going to be a sophomore slump? We don't know. There's too much I feel comfortable with in Miami versus what the Texans are, going to be doing and how that's all going to work. And they've got a better running back in Joe Mixon.
Yeah.
So, how's that offense going to function? We know what Miami's going to have to do.
So it's Waddle then, you're saying?
Waddle,
or Collins?
Yeah.
Waddle? Okay. Running back again. The new Green Bay Packer, Josh Jacobs or Isaiah Pacheco. Pacheco is going at the 307. What's funny is I think Jacobs used to be going ahead of him, and I've seen him. He's fallen. I'm going to bring up the mojo on him.
Okay.
Excuse me, right now. He was going earlier. We saw him going as a late second round pick back in late May, early June, and now he has fallen. This is as low as he's been as a Green Bay Packer. Josh Jacobs right now at the 312. So he used to be ahead of Pacheco. Pacheco's now moved in front of him at the 307. Who would you rather pick, Pacheco or Jacobs?
I like Pacheco. I mean, again, Kansas City offense, it's hard not to like whoever's going to be the main starting running back. That whole is Clyde Edwards-Helaire factor, that's all done. I mean, it's all Pacheco. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's going to be who's going to get the ball the most. And Jacobs, he got paid. I'm a little concerned. I really haven't drafted Jacobs in anything I've done so far.
How much does the Marshawn Lloyd factor come into play when you think about drafting Josh Jacobs?
Again, with rookies, it's hard to. I'm always a little bit like we always hear the talk, oh, this rookie comes in, he could be
Right.
this, he could be that. And then, remember A.J. Dillon was going to replace Aaron
Right.
Jones, and
Yeah.
that never happened. And how many times have we seen these star college running backs coming into a team? Tank Bigsby was supposed to, be sharing with ETN last year. I mean, we hear it every year, and then it's rare that you see it happen. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of that way with Marshawn Lloyd over in Jacob. They're going to give Jacob the ball. It's his job to lose. If he loses it, then he loses it. But I don't think they're going to let Marshawn Lloyd take it away.
I think you're right. And the only, the thing is I don't really envision, if Jacob stays healthy, I don't envision a big time Lloyd season at all
Right,
this year.
right.
The thing that would concern me about Jacobs is just the presence of Lloyd, and is Jacobs still worth a late 3rd round pick at that point?
Right.
And I don't know if he is. And he's been
Yeah.
falling. Another guy that's been falling, and he really hasn't done anything wrong, has been Zay Flowers. For whatever reason, he's slipping in Fantasy Pros championship drafts. And we'll go back to the Texans wide receiver here, Texans wide receiver team. Who would you rather have drafting on the clock? Are you going to take Diggs, or are you going to take Flowers?
This is a tough one because you've got Zay Flowers, who is pretty much the only receiver in Baltimore. He's got a great rapport with Lamar Jackson, and it's already, more quotes have come out this week about how, Lamar said Flowers looks better. He's big, he's better than ever. He's better than last year. He's really pushing him up of how much they're going to use him. So he has no competition. On the other side of that, you've got the 4-headed monster, or at least 3-headed monster in Houston with Diggs, Collins, and Dell, and maybe even Noah Brown if they don't let him go. But so on the other side of that, though, Stephon Diggs is playing for a paycheck. And nothing motivates these players than the big paycheck. And if he doesn't perform, he's right at that, 29, 30 years old. If he doesn't perform, he's not going to get paid. So I feel like he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's going to be trying to get the ball as much as possible. It's a tough call. If I had to pick, probably I'll go Diggs again, more of the veteran. And will Flowers, will they throw the ball that much in, Baltimore, especially if Derrick Henry is running the ball well, which they didn't have a really strong running game. They had a lot of different backs, but if Henry becomes Derrick Henry of a couple of years ago, they're not going to need to throw the ball between that and their defense. So I'll go Diggs.
And there's been this groundswell for Rashad Bateman this year too, which I don't understand.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I respect that it's a possibility,
Sure,
but it's not something that it's just weird to me seeing that. Quarterbacks. We haven't talked much quarterbacks in this segment. Let's do Joe Burrow or Dak Prescott. And I think what keeps these guys similar to each other in the fact is their ADP, but also injury here, because Prescott just had a boot on. He says it's precautionary. Burrow, it doesn't sound like he's fully recovered from that wrist thing. I know Nelson Sousa was just sitting in on from FTN was just sitting in on our live draft coverage on for the FFPC, and he said he's just getting the heebie-jeebies from the Bengals offense this year. And I think part of it is the Burrow thing. But Burrow and Prescott, if they do start the season healthy, which Bob, quite frankly, is all we care about, if they're healthy by week 1,
right?
Both of these guys could represent some big time value. Who would you rather pick though if you could only have one?
Again, I'm going to lean towards the guy going after the money, and that's Dak Prescott. Just because he's looking for the big paycheck. He showed what a monster he can be the second half of last year. That offense doesn't have much from a running game perspective. I mean, now you're looking at an aging Ezekiel Elliott, not the prime Ezekiel Elliott as the main back. So I feel like they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. And so, I'm going to lean towards Prescott with that one.
Prescott is probably my pick as well. Although I do, what's funny is I think I actually have more shares of Burrow right now than Prescott, but
yeah, I had Burrow. Like I said, I drafted Burrow in the Scott Fish Bowl, and you know why? Because Prescott was picked right before.
Right. There you go. Yeah. Tight ends, a couple of NFC North guys, Cole Kmet or Luke Musgrave. I feel like, I don't think they were going this close together in ADP last year.
Did I say neither?
What? Neither? You don't like either one this year?
They bore me. I mean, I feel like I can go get, I could go get Dalton Schultz, or Freiermuth, and I feel better about it than I would Kmet or Musgrave.
Okay.
And I think they're probably similar ADPs, probably.
For what it's worth, Freiermuth and Schultz are going ahead of both those guys, but it's not by much. Schultz is basically going back to back with Kmet, and then Musgrave goes a couple of picks after Kmet. What is it about? I mean, so okay, I get why you'd think Kmet is boring. He's I don't know how much end zone looks he's going to get with all those receivers, and obviously a talented
and Green Bay's in the same situation, right? I mean, they've got four receivers that Jordan Love has the ability to throw to. So it's almost like their tight end is just there to make sure that they hold the line a little bit longer so Love gets a better look.
Right.
And, you know, and then Kmet's also didn't they also go out and sign Gerald Everett?
Yeah, Everett's a Bear. Yep.
Yeah, so it's like you said, I'm out on either. There's nothing there either one of them that excite me about.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind too is like we're drafting for upside at that point. At that point in the draft, like how much upside does Kmet have? How much upside does Musgrave have? Probably not a whole lot. And it's not necessarily an indictment on their talent. It's an indictment of everybody else on those
around
teams.
them, right?
Yeah. Here's one from the YouTube chat. We'll go to Bill Hollywood here with a running back question. David Montgomery or Raheem Mostert? These guys are going fairly close to each other. Montgomery running back 22 at the 704. Mostert running back 26 at the 712. So about a half round separating those guys. Montgomery is going first. Is that the way you would be drafting them as well? Montgomery over Mostert?
It would be. You know, it's interesting how both of those guys last year were, you know, very, very consistent. In fact, Montgomery, I was like 83%. He was like in the top 10 in consistency for running backs. Now, he missed a few games, which always seems to be a thing for him. Mostert, you know, at one point was number 2 total points for the year until he kind of slowed down at the end of the year. But now it's like, well, is he going to get the ball or is it going to be H-in all the time?
Yeah,
I can't imagine H-in can stay healthy and take that much, you know, attempts. But if I had to pick, I'm going to go Montgomery just because he proved that he, you know, he's a little bit younger than Mostert. I just, you know, Mostert's just one of those crapshoots. Like I got him last year as a $4 running back in my Kings Classic Auction League, and he helped me make it to the finals. But then he sucked in the finals, and I lost.
Right. Yeah.
You know, but yeah, those are tough ones because they're kind of the second back, but also not the second back. I mean, they're pretty much a 1A, 1B with their faster, you know, younger player
cohorts
with them between Gibbs and H-in. So,
this is going to be a fun one. We'll stick in the backfield here.
All right.
Rookie Trey Benson, who we just heard from the Cardinals beat reporter that Michael Carter might actually work in behind James Conner this year, or Nick Chubb, a guy who has been, God bless his heart, he's been awesome for the Browns. And I know that you probably just were sick to your stomach watching. I mean, everybody was sick to their stomach watching that injury last year. And it was weird this whole offseason. It seemed like, Chubb's trending in the right direction. It's not as bad as we thought, and it looks like he's going to be fine. All of a sudden, we get the bombshell like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Nobody talks about this, by the way. There's no timetable for his return. What? Where did that come from? It was all perfect, and all of a sudden, we don't know when he's going to be back. So this is interesting. A rookie versus a guy who probably his best football is behind him, but does he still have good football left in him? Benson or Chubb, who are you picking?
In what round are we picking?
That's a good question, and I should have brought this up. Nick Chubb is a Trey Benson, a 10-0. They're both 10-02. Both have ADPs of the 10-02. Running back 36, running back 38.
So probably in something like FFPC, I'm probably going to lean toward Chubb just because, man, if he does come back, even if he only plays 10 games, if he plays 10 games at 80% of Nick Chubb from the past, you're going to get a hell of a lot more production than you're going to get at 100% of Trey Benson at whatever we don't even know. Because Chubb will become the number one and will become the leader again whenever he's ready. Now, I live local, so I see a lot more local reports. I've heard a lot of things. Chubb is just chomping at the bit to get back. He's running on the sidelines. He's working his ass off. You know, he doesn't want to miss a game. Now, probably not possible, but this is a guy that you don't have to you don't have to guess whether or not he's really speaking the truth. This guy's passionate. This guy wants to win. He wants to put his, be the best player he can. I don't think he would go on the field if he wasn't, but I think he damn well wants to make sure that he's 100% to get out there so that he can help this team, because he knows if Watson can play well and they can get that and keep, the offense can match last year's defense. And, they made the playoffs and won 11 games with that terrible scenario. They could be very competitive, and it could be, I won't use the S word, but they certainly could, get to the SB if all that comes together. Right.
Right.
Tough road to hoe through Kansas City, Buffalo, all them. But again, they won 11 games. Their defense was amazing. Yeah, it's possible. So I'm going to go Nick Chubb. Just because I feel like that gives me a better chance that I might use him versus Benson, which, you need Connor to get hurt. You need him to be productive, Benson to be productive. And Michael Carter's in the way. Yeah, so I'm going to go Nick Chubb.
Regarding the Browns running back situation, if Chubb isn't healthy or if he's not ready to go, there's a huge disparity between Browns running backs in Fantasy Pros championship drafts right now. Deontay Foreman is running back 63. Jerome Ford is running back 39. Basically, you're looking at 6.5 rounds separating these players. Is Foreman the guy that you want because of the value, or is Ford the better guy there?
No, I think Foreman's the one I would want because of the value. And he the past couple of years, he's been a backup and has filled in when somebody went down. It did a pretty damn good job in Carolina and some of those places. Chicago last year, right? So yeah, I feel like Ford certainly did a nice job and can be a good player, but I feel like they need to use Foreman as much as possible because I think he's the stronger runner, can give them the push at the goal lines, which I don't think they had once Chubb went down. So yeah, I think Foreman is a hell of a value at running back 69.
Two quarterbacks that we've touched on tonight. We haven't necessarily broken down their games. Who would you rather pick between Kirk Cousins and Matthew Stafford in the Fantasy Pros Championship right now? Their ADP is very, very close to each other. Kirk Cousins 1412, Matthew Stafford 1504.
That's a good one. I like them both that late. I wouldn't really be too disappointed if I got either one. I think it comes down to who could stay healthy the whole season. That's really what it comes down to.
100%, yes.
Cousins coming off an injury, but never really been an injury prone. Matthew Stafford is a few years older and is an injury prone. So I'll probably go Cousins just because I feel like he could probably stay the healthiest. And they both have very good teams around them. So, again, I think the production will be there for both. But if I had to choose, I think I would go with Cousins just because I think he has the better chance of making it through the season pretty much unscathed.
100% with you on that. I'm fine with either one, but if I had to pick one, I'm going to lean towards Cousins. I think I'm just so excited about that Atlanta offense, and if that's another way I can get a cheap piece of it, then yeah, I'm going to do it for sure. Bob Lung, the founder of the Fantasy Football Expo, the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. Check out his work at BigGuyFantasySports.com. Let's get talking about this Fantasy Football Expo because we are less than a month away. We're going to tell you everything about it, how you can attend, what's going to be there, what's new for 2024. And we'll also get into the consistency guide as well. You're watching the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network.
Is Dynasty. And the place to play is myffpc.com. Go to myffpc, use promo code Kupp. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more. Now is the time to get in there and get set up with a startup draft. Now is the time, now that the rookies and everyone are set, because you can go in and you can start the draft. And, you draft your Justin Jeffersons and Jamar Chases. And now that we know where the rookies are and where they're landing, you get going on that. So you want to try and set a startup draft for this week coming up if you're not involved yet. So go get involved. Use the QR code here or use the promo code that's in the link in the description here and get yourself going on Dynasty so you can really enjoy these players and draft the players you believe in. If you like Michael Penix Jr., you got to play Dynasty because you got to wait for him, but the payoff is big. And same with Persall and Jackson Smith and Jigba and all these guys. Get in and do that. And I'll tell you what, the orphan leagues over there that we've been talking about, Those all got bought up. They're actually all sold. People from the show I know took over a bunch of them. So right now, startups is the way to go. That's the way to rock and roll. It is startup season. Startup season and rookie draft season. That's what's up. Get set up at myffpc.com. Use promo code Kupp. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more and give you a leg up. No dealing with chasing around your friends and making them pay dues and having your buddy be like, oh, dude, I got to quit the league because I got a dog and I can't pay attention no more and I don't want to do trades. Forget all that. You can play online, MyFFPC, high stakes, low stakes, whatever you want to do with experts. And if somebody leaves the league, it goes in that orphan pool and somebody picks it up. The league has never been disbanded on FFPC.com. That's directly from Eric Balkman over there has told me that. So that's what's up. Get set up.
Welcome back to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. You just saw that vid for the FFPC Fantasy Pros Championship, and I'm actually just looking at the website to see what we have open tonight right now. We are looking at 4 different draft times. Let's see. One of them is already complete. The other one just started. We do have 3 teams available in the 10 p.m. draft tonight, and we have 10 teams available in the midnight draft tonight. So if you want to get involved and draft for $1 million tonight, you can. And if you do at myffpc.com or scanning the QR code right on your screen, you'll be eligible for that weekday giveaway drawing we will hold early tomorrow morning. We're giving away 3 free Fantasy Pros Championship teams. So if you are lucky enough to get one of those teams, you'll get a free entry to try to win $1 million, and that'll be on top of the entry that you already drafted tonight in trying to win $1 million and a $6 million grand prize pool and the Fantasy Pros Championship. Deep prize payouts in this one, including a 7-figure grand prize. So check that out, myffpc.com, or simply scan that QR code. Okay. The other thing I want to bring up, the Terminator live drafts, the Terminator slows are going on right now. What's the Terminator, Turney, you ask, with the FFPC? It is a best ball tournament where you draft a full best ball team, but you drop one player off your roster every week until the final week when you just have a starting lineup, or as some people do, have a partial starting lineup where they don't even field the full starting lineup to try to win a $25,000 grand prize. Get a 3-pack for $1,000. You can save $50 on that. $120,000 in this prize pool, limited to 384 teams. The FFPC Terminator is something we invented. We're very proud of, and it's been very popular every year. So get in now. Slow drafts going on at myffpc.com. Another thing that everybody's very excited about and can't stop talking about, you can't go on X without people blah, 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 blahing about everything that they're going to do at the Fantasy Football Expo 2024 is the Fantasy Football Expo. And we're lucky enough to have the founder tonight, Bob Lung from Big Guy Fantasy Sports. I want to ask you how this idea came about in your mind. How was it executed? And when was the first year that the Fantasy Football Expo started?
Well, the first year was 2019, but it kind of all started, so I've been born and raised Canton, Ohio. I've lived 5-10 miles away from the Pro Football Hall of Fame my entire life, which I know how many years the Hall of Fame's been there because it opens 11 days before I was born. So that's how I know how long it's been there. But when back in 2011, I was writing for Roto Experts, if you remember that group.
Sure.
Scott Engel, Adam Ronis, Dr. Roto, me, Jake Seeley. We had a hell of a team there. Anyway, but they put on this fantasy football convention in the Atlantic City Convention Center. Huge place, massive, lots of people, or lots of, space. But it was very expensive. I mean, I didn't have to pay anything, but I know it was very expensive to get a booth, very expensive to attend. And they did autograph sessions with former Jets and Giants in the back of the room. And the 2 things that I saw was, one, it was very expensive to be a part of it and to attend, but most of the people bought their $90 ticket at the door or whatever, walked in with all of their stuff that they needed signed, went to the back of the room, got their autographs, and walked out for $90 because they're going to go sell it on eBay and make more money than that. So while there was some people that did come and do the fantasy football stuff, I remember that Jeff Ratcliffe and Mike Clay were on stage to do a presentation or like a panel. There were 2 people in the audience. So it just was too big, too much, too everything, and throw in the autograph. So that was my first kind of like, oh, this is interesting. I see what they're doing, but I see what they did wrong. But I didn't think about, oh, I'm going to do this someday, 15 years ago. But 10 years ago, when I've also driven for Hall of Fame weekend for 34 years and have driven everybody from Al Davis to John Madden to Kurt Warner, and I've watched this Hall of Fame weekend, which happens the first weekend in August, go from this little 2-day small event into this 5-day extravaganza with concerts and 25,000 people in a stadium on ESPN. And I was just like, I kind of learned some stuff of like how to do it, how to put together the weekend, how to get sponsors, I kind of learned from a lot of that stuff. So I kind of combined those two. And like I said, in my head, this was 10 years ago. I'm like, man, we really should do a fantasy football thing in Canada. I think it would be cool. We've got the Hall of Fame. We've got, we're kind of in the middle of all the big cities. It's 6 hours from Chicago, and a lot of big cities are fairly close, or at least drivable. And so I remember I talked to a few of the people at the Hall of Fame, and I said, hey, what do you think about this idea? And they kind of just patted me on the head, like, oh, that's a cute idea, And so in 2018, I started the idea by first creating the Kings Classic draft. So that was the other thing that I noticed that we didn't have in our community was fantasy baseball had their labor draft and their tout wars, which was the best of the best. And they went to New York and they would go to cool places. Like in 2018, they were drafting in the Staten Island AAA Yankees locker room and had their names on the lockers. It was just sounded really cool on Sirius XM. Matt Deutsch was probably producing at the time, I'm sure. And so I finally reached out to like Mike Clay and Brad Evans and some of the guys who I knew now and kind of had some street cred built with them. And I go, hey, here's my idea. We should do this for football, but let's draft in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So you guys come to Canton, Sirius XM comes in, we'll do this. And, so we came up with the Kings Classic was the name because Kings X Bar was the first live draft in Oakland back in 1968 or whatever it was. So that's where the Kings Classic kind of comes into play. And so we did that, and it was a huge success. Sirius XM loved it. We loved it. And so that night I said, hey, guys, what if next year we added like a little trade show booth and some panel discussions to kind of make a weekend out of it, do more than just that, make an expo. And so that's what we did in 2019. We only had about 75 people, total. And it was like, okay, well, it was fun. It was cute. We'll try it again next year and try to build it. But then the next year was COVID. So,
right.
So then I'm like, okay, well, this is dead in the water. We'll never pull this off. And so 2021 comes, it's February. People were starting to ask me about the expo. And I'm like, well, I guess we have vaccinations coming, I guess we'll give it a shot. Well, I guess the COVID thing kind of helped me because everybody wanted to get out of the house. So 500 people showed up at the expo that year.
Wow.
Yeah. And so like I ran out of shirts. I was totally caught off guard. And so then, last couple of years, we've been 750, 800, pretty consistent with that. But that's kind of how it all came together. I was just like, let's just do this. And I made it where everything was very, not cheap, but less expensive. Like it's $475 for a booth for the weekend. It's, $75, $95 for the whole weekend to come in and participate in every event that you can come, because I didn't want it to be I can't afford it. I wanted to be so that people like myself who, back in the day was doing my own thing. I was trying to get exposure, trying to promote my consistency stuff. I wanted that to be happening here so that new people could introduce new products, new ideas. And that's what, those are all the bonus things. People have gotten jobs. Lawrence Jackson got hired by NBC Sports because he came to the expo and introduced himself. So lots of great things have happened, but that's kind of how this all came about. And, it just blows my mind every year with the excitement and the love that people have for it. And it makes me feel really good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What a story that was. So basically, COVID you don't count because
Yeah,
you
right.
couldn't do it. But that from year 1 to year 2, I mean, that's like almost a 700% growth,
I
which is just
know. It was dumbfounding. I know.
wow, that's
Yeah.
crazy. So I think so it's this is something that you spearhead, but you obviously get a lot of help from that from other people on this, right?
So for the actual event itself, no, it's me. And then during the weekend, my wife is in charge of all volunteers.
Mhm.
So all my friends, family, neighbors, people I pull off the streets just come and volunteer and help us kind of run the event for the weekend. But most of it is done by me. I mean, I have obviously a really good person in Nate Cheatham who put together my website from IDP Plus. But I also have, like you said, I think more of it is just that I have the community support.
Yeah.
It may not be a, hey, they're going to come and move boxes or find sponsors for me, but it's they're my marketing. Like
Right.
I don't have to pay for any marketing on Twitter because I have this 800 people that are just every day going, I can't wait for it. It's 32 days.
Yep.
It's just nonstop. And God bless them because they're what drive this. I mean, they're getting the people to tell people, hey, you should go. And that's why I'm always excited when there's new people because that means the word keeps spreading.
Right.
So yeah, it's just it's the same thing we all got started in fantasy for, right? We have a passion, we do it, we don't think about how much work it is, we just love doing it, and it's not work if you love what you're doing, right?
That's a great point. Yeah. It's just what's the line from that country song is find, do what you love and then call it work, basically
There you go.
is
Right.
what you're doing. Is there anything that you're particularly excited about for this year's event or maybe something new that hasn't been there before?
Yeah, so this year on Saturday, we're doing a 4-hour expo, all focused on sports betting. So we're calling it Sports Betting Saturday. Better Vision, Brett Lanier, Jeff Doyle's group is our sponsor for that day. And we're just going to put, the best people we can get on stage talking about prop bets, lines, parlays, responsible gaming, bankroll management, all that kind of stuff to help do better. I mean, I'm just getting into it because Ohio just got approved in 23. So I could do a lot better. And that's why I need these people to kind of tell me, oh yeah, look at this, look at that. I'm a fantasy football guy and I'm just trying to fit that into a prop bet world. But we're really excited about that. Underdog Fantasy then is basically sponsoring the Fantasy Football Sunday, which is 6 hours of panels. And we have 50 trade show booths all sold out, all kinds of genres with all kinds of different products, not just necessarily fantasy knowledge, but games and new trophies things and just all kinds of great stuff.
Mm-hmm. I think it's going to be tremendous. It's going to be awesome. This is probably the best year ever for it, obviously. I wanted to ask you about the actual drafts, and Matt Deutsch and you and I were talking about this prior. There is something to be said. So many fantasy football drafts are online right now. It's very convenient to draft online. You could do it on your phone, your computer, your tablet, whatever. But there is something special about being in that room with 11 other people or whatever it is, or like what you do or what we do in Vegas, where we have these giant rooms with tons of drafts going on. There is something special about that, being at the table with those other like-minded fantasy diehards, essentially, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And that's what you got going on too with the Kings Classic.
Right. Well, we actually have two things. So we have the Kings Classic, which is invite only. It's the best of the best coming together inside the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But we also have a group in between media, Seth Woolcock and his group, and it's called Draft Night Out. And it's just basically you pay like $30 and it's just for fun and prizes. And they have raffle tickets and they raffle off, jerseys and helmets and, it's just a fun draft. So if you want to just come and have some fun, you just do Draft Night Out. That's draftnightout.com if you want to register. They're about 3/4 full, but it's a great time. They do it inside this place called the Brew Kettle. It's a craft beer place, bar type thing, and food and like about 100. They have 12 leagues, 12 teams, about 150 people. Pack the house with the boards and all that stuff, and then like you said, the Kings Classic. drafting in a room when you're sitting there with, Marcus Grant, Jeff Mans, JJ Zacharias, and, Mike Clay, on and on and on, Dave Richards, Jeff Ratcliffe. That's intense. I mean, that's, you want to talk about like, okay, you have plan A, B, C, double Z before your next pick, and it's only 3 picks away,
Right.
It's tough stuff, but it's also a blast, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like you said, you guys have the same thing with the FFPC. I did one of those about 10 years ago. But yeah, I loved it. I gotta get out and start doing more of those as well.
There's just an energy to it that you just can't replicate online. And I love online fantasy football drafting, but there is something about that local league feel with the high stakes. Just the best. Where are people going to register for this? If they want in on it, and when is it? August? It's
August 9th through the 11th. So weekend after Hall of Fame.
Right.
So when the Hall of Fame game's on, the next weekend.
Right.
In the same place. August 9th through the 11th, Canton, Ohio. We start with a Friday night party, and we keep going until 6 p.m. or 4 p.m. on Saturday. And then we have a after party karaoke. So, it's nonstop fun. Like I said, it's kind of like I tell people it's kind of like a frat party with fantasy football breaking out.
Gary Davenport was talking about the songs he was going to sing at the Expo this year for the karaoke jam, which
I'm looking
Gary
forward
Davenport
to that.
Singing karaoke. That is
Scott Engel too. He's another
oh my God, unbelievable. If you can get those guys.
So you said tickets. So go to thefantasyfootballexpo.com. That's where you can get your tickets. Like I said, the whole weekend's $95. There's plenty of hotels available with rooms. Once you buy your ticket, there's a special page that will pop up, and all the discounted ones. And like the most expensive room is like $150. Wow. It's Canton, Ohio. This isn't Cleveland. This isn't Vegas. It's Midwest, small town USA. So definitely come. It's very affordable, especially if you can drive in and spend a weekend with us. I think you'll enjoy it, and you'll be back and bring more friends the next time.
Right. Yeah, I think that it's going to be great. Go to thefantasyfootballexpo.com. Get your tickets now. $95 for the whole weekend. Affordable hotels in Canton, Ohio. It's going to be a blast. You're going to meet a lot of people that are probably going to become lifelong friends because of the shared interest in fantasy football that they have with you. We have a couple of minutes left. Let's get into your fantasy football consistency guide. Mm-hmm. For anybody who is not familiar with this, can you tell us a little bit about why consistency is important, why you produce this every year? And it's one award, so it's good. Yeah. But can you give us a little bit about how this came about and how you put it together every year?
This came about because I started playing fantasy in 1985. In 2002, because again, as I mentioned, touchdown only league, because that's how we started, because we didn't have computers. But anyway, that year I had MVP Sean Alexander on my team. And he rushed for 15 touchdowns, but one of them in one game was 5 touchdowns in a single game. And in 2 other games, he had 3 in one game and 2 in another. So he had 2/3 of his touchdowns in 3 games out of the 14 regular season games. You don't score any points if you don't get touchdowns. So that means those 5 touchdowns remaining were spread out over 11 games. Needless to say, my team was second in scoring, but was 7-7. I was 500, missed the playoffs by a game. And so I looked at it. I'm an accountant by day, so I'm a numbers guy. So I looked at it and I said, if you would have scored like 1 touchdown like every week, I would have won another, 2 more games. I'd have made the playoffs. I would have won the championship. And I was like, well, wait a minute. If that applies to just the simple touchdown only, I bet this could apply to any scoring method. I just got to figure out the calculation. And so long story short, figured it out. Took it to the web, built. And then 9 years ago, I had been writing for a few folks in the magazines you'd find on the shelves with an article about consistency. But I kept asking them about, hey, can I create player profiles with the consistency and put it in with yours? And they're like, nope, not enough room. Thank you. I love the idea. Why don't you self-publish? Amazon, you can do this. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so I did. And like you said, a couple of years in, I submitted it to the FSWA and, was nominated for best publication. The second year, 2018, I actually won the award. And now I've been nominated 7 straight years as one of the best. And it's just an honor just to be nominated, because it's usually with NBC Sports or Diehards or somebody, you know, that I certainly look up to, and I love them very much. But and so it was just created to share this knowledge and this information so that people know, like, hey, you know, Lamar Jackson last year was the MVP, but guess what? He was only 63% consistent, which means in 37% of his games, or a third of his games, he was actually below 18.5 fantasy points. Is that what you want as your first guy? I mean, yeah, he could put up better numbers, but you know, before you look at that number 4 in scoring and total points, make sure you look at the model, make sure you look at the book to see how consistent they did it. And that will may make a difference between these two players that, you know, a lot of them you were comparing. And I was like, well, I go with this guy because he's, you know, a lot more consistent than that person. That's what I'm using the guide. And that's what I want people to use the guide for, to make the right decision so that you don't end up being second in scoring and not making the playoffs.
Do you find that certain players or certain positions, and this is like, we're going to be at the nexus of the universe for this.
Yeah.
Do you find that certain players year after year, their consistency is consistent or their consistency is inconsistent? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the stars are the stars.
Right.
And, you know, you look at the model and, you know, Mike Evans, Keenan Allen's, you know, the players, you know, they're there every year, you know, unless they're injured, you know, or have a bunch of injuries during the year that slow them down. If they're healthy, they're going to put up the numbers on a consistent basis. You know, they may be plus or minus in total points, but you can count on them. And that's the kind of guys, like you said, when I build that core model of my team, my starting team, I want to have as many players over 70, 75% consistent, closer. I'd rather them all be 80 to 90, but they're not.
Right.
But, you know, I want that core to be that, because if I have that, then I can grab those flyers later. And if one of them does happen to make that jump into the starting lineup, I still got that really high floor on a weekly basis, that if I get a boost of any of them in a peak week, then I should win more games. And that's my goal. Is, you know, my goal isn't to win championships. I mean, it is, but my goal is to how many of my teams in my leagues can make the playoffs, because that's where the consistency model gets me, because you can't win a championship if you don't make the playoffs. It's just, you know, 98%, you know, 99.9% of the putts that don't make it to the hole don't go in and golf.
Of course.
Right?
That's right. Yes, yeah, exactly.
It's the same thing with championships. You know, you're not going to win one if you don't get to the playoffs in the first place. And so that's what the model is there for, is to get you over that hump. You know, if you're that person that every year you're missing by a game or two, you just get like, man, I just, you know, a lot of people say I'm not lucky. You know, I'm unlucky. I always seem to miss by a game or two. You might be drafting some more inconsistent players than you think you are. And that's what the book's about. So
so is the best way to pick this up is to simply go on Amazon and search fantasy football consistency guide. Yep. Is that the best way to do it?
Obviously the best way. I mean, you can buy the PDF through the Big Guy Fantasy Sports website. And then as I update the book for any changes, you know, injuries or anything like that. And then I do a tier draft list, 1-pager Excel that I update, of course, through the season. And then those updates are actually on the website as well. When you buy the book, there's a code at the bottom and you can get the season access for Big Guy Fantasy Sports and all their consistency tools for only $10.
Okay.
So.
That's okay. So there's a lot here that I want to make everybody aware of. Number one, bigguyfantasysports.com, at Bob_Lung on the X, thefantasyfootballexpo.com, $95 for the entire weekend. Spend your weekend in Canton, August 9th through the 11th. You'll have a great time. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then Amazon.com, Fantasy Football Consistency Guide. I think that's everything, right, Bob?
That's great. And thank you again for having me, man. That's a fast 2 hours.
It really does fly by. It really does fly by. He is Bob Lung from the Fantasy Football Expo, the Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, and Big Guy Fantasy Sports. I want to thank him, our producer, Matt Deutsch. We are back this coming Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern time with another Kings Classic drafter and FFPC Pros versus Joe's Pro. It's going to be late rounds. JJ Zacharyson is going to host for the next 2 hours next Thursday. That's going to be a lot of fun. Went through a lot of stuff that's going on at at the FFPC, the FFPC main event live and slow drafts, the FFPC best ball tournament, the FFPC Superflex best ball tournament. Sign up now at myffpc.com. Dynasty startup leagues are popping off almost every single day. We always get a bunch popping off on the weekends. FFPC Empire Dynasty leagues, dynasty leagues with a twist where anybody who wins the prize pool, or excuse me, anybody who wins the league 2 years in a row will get the Empire prize pool that's set aside every year, as well as the first place prize pool. And then the league disbands. You're free to join a new Empire league and you get your deposit back. It is a win-win-win, as Michael Scott would say. So check that out at myffpc.com. We still have spots open in the 10 p.m. Fantasy Pros Championship draft tonight, as well as the midnight Fantasy Pros Championship draft tonight. So check that out. Bob, thank you so much, man. Enjoy Canton. I will see you very soon. And I'll see you when you're drafting your Pros versus Joe's team on July 28th.
Absolutely. And hey, thank you again for being the sponsor to give us a free entry into the $1 million contest. So if you buy your tickets, come to the Expo, you could win an entry into that $1 million competition. So thanks again, guys.
Absolutely. And perhaps become the next FFPC millionaire, and you can have Bob Lung to thank for it. For Bob Lung and Matt Deutsch, I am Eric Balkman. This has been the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show on the Better Sports Network. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for watching.